Saturday, June the 23rd, 2012, and we are visiting with my mother.
Tell me about your growing up years.
Well, I had a lot of them. No, I was born in Cuero, Texas, at home.
Was home 1012 Hunt Street,
That's right.
and was that where you were born?
That's where I was born.
So how many brothers did you have?
2 brothers, older than I. Hans was 2 years older than I, and Lou was 6.5 years older than I.
What elementary school did you go to?
Hunt, J.C. Hunt.
And then was the high school just Cuero High School?
Yeah,
And you were a yell leader?
I was a cheerleader.
Cheerleader?
I was the first cheerleader that Cuero had.
And what was the cheer that we recite with great glee?
Are we ready? Well, I guess. Cuero, Cuero, yes, yes, yes. But I never did lack for friends while I was growing up in Cuero.
Tell us a little bit about life at the dinner table with Granddaddy Wallace and Granny Wallace at the house in Cuero,
And both my brothers,
and both your brothers.
well, Lou and Hunt sat on one side of the table. I sat on the other one by myself. And twice fell over backwards into the china cabinet that was right behind me. Anyway, I wasn't very good. And Hans and I fought the whole time, argued and fought. We didn't get to be real good friends till we were I was in high school.
Tell us about the conduct of the meals.
Well, he sat at one end of the table, Mother sat at the other, and Dad carved the meat and served it. We all had to pass our plates, giving each person what he thought they should have. We had to have real beef every day. We always had prime cuts because Dad knew the difference. And that's something we never have here. And we usually had fried chicken on Sunday.
Tell us about his lectures.
Oh, he told us that's where I learned all the history.
Who is this you're talking about?
My father, your grandfather, his grandfather.
His name was?
H.W. Wallace.
H.W. Wallace, yeah,
Holland West Wallace.
that's right.
Every meal was an education, is that right?
That's right. He just took over the conversation. And and lots of times if one of us would speak up and say something, he'd say, hush. He was educating us. And Mother taught us all the manners we ever had, table manners.
Did you spend all of your growing up years in Cuero?
I lived there till went off to school when I was 17. It was Brenau College in Gainesville, Georgia. That's where my first college year was spent.
And after Brenau, is that when you went to the University of Texas?
I think so.
How did that come about?
Well, I wanted to go when I graduated from high school, and Dad wouldn't let me. I couldn't go to that den of iniquity. So I was sent to an all-girls school.
How did it come about that you then went to the University of Texas?
Well, pressure from me and Hans, particularly Hans. He had planned my life from there on. He had already been there for a couple of years, and he knew what sorority he wanted me to join.
So you went to the University of Texas and you pledged Phi Phi?
And I pledged Phi Phi, Phi Beta Phi.
And
Ring, ching, ching, ring, ching, ching, Phi Beta Phi. I thought that would be interesting.
when did you meet Dad?
I met him at a dance in Cameron, and a lot of people went from the university. He was from Oglesby.
When was this that this dance was, Mother?
The first year I was down there.
And how did your courtship go from there?
Speedily. And we got married then on June the 7th, 1930. We were both still in the university. I know it was a rush affair, and we had a hard time with my parents agreeing for me to get married, but I wasn't going to slip off and get married. I wanted them to know it, and we had a beautiful wedding. I had pictures of old-fashioned weddings where the man sat down in a chair and the woman stood beside him with her hand on his shoulder. And Mother wanted pictures of the wedding and the reception. We had it out in the garden there in Cuero. And Mother and her friends had decorated the yard, made it. They had an arch built, and they had it back underneath or right on the edge of that great big oak tree. You remember the one you fell out of?
Certainly do. You married in Cuero, but where was Dad? What was he doing and where was he?
Your father was in Waco.
After you married, where did you and Dad then set up housekeeping?
In Austin, we were driving around and we saw a little cottage being built, a little two-bedroom, but it was very, very charming. I wish I had some indoor pictures of that, but I don't. We lived there until that school year was over. Oh, and then the Depression hit, and nobody had any money. We moved to Hearn, found a lovely house, except that it was across the street from the railroad track.
And this was in the early part of the Depression.
Yeah.
And Dad was working for the highway department.
He got that job. A friend of his who worked for the highway department gave him a very low financial job carrying the chain.
Right.
And
And then Dad went to Waco and started studying law under the tutelage
Clay
of a
McClellan.
man named Clay McClellan, correct? And he was driving back and forth from the farm to Waco to do that?
Every day.
And all the time that we were growing up and while we were living on Austin Avenue, that was his job as General Counsel of Amicable Life Insurance.
And it was a big job.
Where did the name BB come from?
One day I was out when Jim was still in high school, I guess. So I had on some worn out blue jeans that Betsy had left at home when she was already off at school. Jim and Cersei came riding up the driveway in Waco on their bicycles, and I was digging in the flower bed right beside the driveway, wearing those pants and leaning over like this. And Jim said, "Woo, BB." And I knew what he meant, but I wasn't going to tell people.
But it really wasn't.
But I was in that posture when they saw me. And, ooh, BB. But it got out somewhere. And now a lot of people call me BB all these years.
Tell me about your children.
Well, I had 3 of them things.
Your first child was?
Dink, but you know, Dink took 11 months to be born because we went to Cuero for Christmas. We thought Dink was going to be born during the Christmas holidays. So he was born on March the 26th. He's been late ever since. My second child was James Wallace Jones. As he very pointedly said, the first. He had heard people say Dink was O.F. Jones III. He said that he was James Wallace Jones the first.
And he was born on November the 6th, 1936. And then the other child that you had was,
Betsy
and
Jones,
her name is,
Layla Elizabeth Jones.
and she was born on,
On December the 13th, that's what she would tell everybody. Her birthday was December the 13th.
1940. And us three children grew up at 2525 Austin Avenue in Waco, Texas.
Yeah, first you lived over there on Gorman, but we moved several times in Waco.
Well, first we lived on Trice Street.
Well, they weren't all of you there.
Then we lived on 29th Street.
Okay.
Then we lived on Gorman Street. And then we lived on Austin Avenue.
Dink, he and his father bought that T-model Ford for $15, but it wouldn't run all the time. Dink and his friends worked on that car out in the backyard. So Dink would get in it and put Jim behind it, and Jim would push it. Dink would guide it.
We'd go down the driveway hill to get it started.
That's right.
Tell me about your church and how long you've been going there.
I went to St. Francis Episcopal Church the whole time I have been in Victoria.
And you were pretty active, were you not?
Very. I went to church every Sunday. I taught Sunday school, president of the Altar Guild twice, and worked on it devotedly. I started going to the Episcopal Church in Cuero when I was young. I was about 12. I have 10 grandchildren, and then they had numerous children, and that's where I got the 24 or whatever it is, great-grandchildren, and not a bad apple in the bunch.
None of us are on welfare. None of us are living in poverty. None of us are living on food stamps.
Didn't have a divorce in the bunch.
They all have good jobs. They're all earning their own living.
Nobody's gone to jail.
None of them are criminals.
Well, that's exactly what I meant when I said I didn't have a bad apple in the bunch. I really think that's a record.
What makes you the most proud?
Well, I was proud of being Layla Wallace, extremely proud. I was proud of who I was, proud of my parents, still am. I think my mother was the most wonderful woman I have ever known, in every respect.
Are you proud of your children?
Oh, of course, I'm terribly proud of them and terribly disgusted with them sometimes.
Why? What in the world for?
Dumb things you've done. But I'm equally proud of the wonderful things you've done. No, I'm proud of my children, extremely. I'm proud of the fact that they're all not only extremely good looking, but they are extremely intelligent. They are extremely good citizens.
What are the most enjoyable memories you have of your life? What have been your highlights?
I guess one of them was my wedding. I was very, very happy then. I don't know any special one. My whole childhood was enjoyable. Everything was exciting. I had problems, but they weren't serious. In that light, I had a wonderful life.
What would you want to say as a sign-off to all of your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren?
You are fine people. You come from fine stock. And as I always say, there's not a bad apple in the bunch. I'm proud of my children, extremely. They never made me ashamed of them or me or us. I love every one of you.